"Can you act as my wife tonight?" The solitary cowboy begged the native woman. The cowboy lived where the land felt endless and quiet, never truly left. His small ranch sat far from the main road, surrounded by dry grass, old fences, and skies that changed color every hour. People in the nearby town knew of him, but few really knew him. He was the kind of man others talked about in short sentences. They said he worked hard. They said he kept to himself. They said he had been alone for a long time. He woke up before the sun every day. The mornings were cold, even in warmer seasons, and the silence pressed against him like weight. He brewed his coffee the same way each morning, ate the same simple meal, and stepped outside to start his work. Horses waited for him, and cattle needed care. The land never asked questions or judged him. It only demanded effort, and he understood that language well. There had been a time when his life was louder. Years ago, the ranch had more people, more voices, and more reasons to smile. But loss had come slowly, then all at once. Family members moved away, some passed on, others chose different lives. The town changed too. New faces came and went, while he stayed rooted to the soil like an old tree. Over time, silence became normal. Loneliness became familiar. He did not complain. Complaining required energy he no longer wanted to spend. Still, there were moments when the quiet felt heavier than usual, especially in the evenings. After the sun dropped and the work ended, he would sit on his porch and watch the sky darken. Sometimes he imagined conversations that never happened. Sometimes he remembered voices that no longer called his name. In town, the native woman lived a life shaped by responsibility and strength. She worked at a small local center that helped preserve community history and traditions. Her days were full, not because they were easy, but because she chose purpose over comfort. She carried herself with calm confidence, and people respected her without needing to be told why. Her life had not been simple either. She had faced her own losses, her own disappointments, and her own moments of doubt. Still, she believed in standing steady. She believed in knowing who she was and where she came from. Her roots ran deep, and even when life pushed hard against her, she did not bend easily. Their paths crossed in ordinary ways. Sometimes it was at the town store, sometimes at the fuel station, sometimes at local meetings where everyone gathered for practical reasons. Their exchanges were brief and polite. A nod, a short greeting, a few words about the weather or work. Neither of them seemed like someone who wanted more than that. Yet, in those quiet exchanges, something unspoken existed. It was not romance or attraction, not yet. It was recognition. They both saw something familiar in each other. A kind of strength that came from surviving rather than winning. A calm that hid deep thoughts. The cowboy noticed how she listened when others spoke. She noticed how he stood apart from crowds, never pushing himself forward. He admired her steadiness. She sensed his loneliness, though he never showed it openly. Neither of them acted on these thoughts. Life had taught them caution. As weeks passed, the town prepared for a gathering that held more meaning than usual. It was not a celebration or a festival. It was a community event tied to tradition, memory, and family presence. People were expected to attend with partners, or at least not alone. The cowboy knew this event was coming, and the knowledge unsettled him. He tried to ignore it at first. He told himself it did not matter what others thought. He told himself he had survived worse than an uncomfortable evening. But as the day approached, old feelings returned. Memories of promises he once made. Expectations he never fulfilled. Faces he would have to see. The idea of walking in alone made his chest feel tight, not because he needed approval, but because it would remind him of everything he had lost. It would turn his quiet loneliness into something visible, something public. He considered not going. He considered staying on the ranch, pretending the event meant nothing. But deep down, he knew that avoiding it would only make the silence louder later. She was expected to attend as part of her work and her place in the community. She approached it differently. For her, it was about honoring the past and showing presence. Still, she understood the weight such events could carry. They brought old stories to the surface, sometimes before people were ready. On the afternoon before the gathering, their paths crossed again at the store. The cowboy stood by the counter, distracted, his thoughts far away. She noticed something was different. His usual calm seemed strained. He looked tired, not from work, but from thinking too much. She asked him if everything was all right. It was a simple question, asked without pressure. He hesitated. He was not used to being asked that, and he was even less used to answering honestly. At first, he gave a short response, said he was fine, said work was busy. But something about her presence made it hard to walk away. She did not rush him. She did not push. She weighted himself by saying more. Not everything, but enough. He mentioned the gathering. He mentioned how long it had been since he had stood beside someone at something like that. His voice stayed steady, but his words carried weight. She listened quietly. She did not interrupt or offer quick advice. When he finished, there was a pause. Not an awkward one, but a thoughtful one. He almost laughed then, a dry, uncertain sound. The thought came to him suddenly, born from desperation rather than planning. He knew it was an unusual idea. He knew it crossed the line he rarely approached. Still, the words escaped before he could stop them. He asked if she would act as his wife for the evening. Just for that night. Just to help him get through it. As soon as he said it, regret hit him. He looked away, embarrassed by his own boldness. He quickly added that he understood if she said no, that he did not mean any disrespect, that he was simply trying to survive one difficult moment. She did not respond right away. Her expression remained calm, but her mind raced. The request was unexpected, and it carried layers of meaning. She understood the risk of being misunderstood. She understood the history behind such assumptions. She also understood loneliness when she saw it. She asked him why he chose her. He answered honestly. He said she felt safe. He said she felt real. He said he trusted her more than anyone else in town. The answer stayed with her. She did not agree immediately. She told him she needed time to think. He nodded, accepting whatever decision she would make. For him, asking had already been a step he never thought he would take. They parted ways that day with uncertainty hanging between them. The land around them remained the same, wide and quiet, but something had shifted. Two solitary lives, long moving parallel without touching, now stood at the edge of change. As the sun set that evening, both of them sat alone with their thoughts, unaware of how much one simple question might alter the shape of their lives. The next morning arrived quietly, but neither of them felt calm inside. The cowboy woke before dawn, as he always did, yet his thoughts were already awake long before his body moved. The question he had asked the day before kept replaying in his mind. Every time he remembered it, a mix of hope and embarrassment followed. He told himself he had crossed the line. He told himself he should not have asked. Still, a small part of him waited for an answer. He went through his routine more slowly than usual. He fed the horses, checked the fences, and walked the land, but his focus drifted. Simple tasks felt heavier. He wondered what she might be thinking. He wondered if she was offended. He wondered if she would avoid him now. The idea of losing even those small, polite conversations bothered him more than he expected. In town, the woman started her day early as well. She prepared for her work at the center, organizing papers, setting up displays, and answering questions from visitors. On the outside, she appeared as steady as ever. On the inside, her thoughts moved in circles. The cowboy's request had surprised her, but it had also touched something deep. She had spent much of her life being strong for herself and others. People often saw her as capable and unshakable. Few asked how she felt or what she carried inside. When the cowboy spoke, he did not speak from a place of control or pride. He spoke from vulnerability, something she respected deeply. Still, she knew she had to be careful. Agreeing to his request could lead to misunderstanding, gossip, or emotional confusion. The town was small, and people noticed things quickly. She also knew that pretending to be someone's wife, even for one night, was not a small thing. It carried weight, even without promises. As the hours passed, she tried to focus on her work. Elders shared stories with her, and younger members asked questions. Listening to them reminded her why she did what she did. Community mattered. Showing up mattered. And sometimes helping someone stand tall for one night could matter too. By midday, she had made a decision, though it was not an easy one. She did not feel pressure from the cowboy. He had given her space. That mattered to her. She decided that if she agreed, it would be on her terms, with clear understanding and respect. Later that afternoon, she saw him again. He had come into town for supplies, his movements careful, his expression guarded. When their eyes met, he looked unsure whether to speak. She was the one who approached him. She asked if they could talk for a moment. He nodded, surprised but relieved. They stepped outside, away from others. The air felt still, as if the world was holding its breath. She told him she had thought about his request. She told him she understood why he asked. She also told him she needed honesty and boundaries. No false promises, no expectations beyond the evening. Just respect? He listened closely, nodding. He agreed without hesitation. He told her he never meant to make things complicated. He only wanted to face the event without feeling invisible or alone. He thanked her for even considering it. When she finally said yes, his reaction was quiet. No big smile. No sudden movement. Just a long breath he did not realize he had been holding. He thanked her again, this time more softly. The moment felt serious, not exciting. Both of them understood this was not a game. They discussed simple details, what time they would arrive, how they would introduce each other, how long they would stay. The conversation stayed practical, almost businesslike, but beneath it was a shared awareness that something personal was happening. As they parted ways, both felt the weight of the choice they had made. The cowboy returned to his ranch with a strange mix of relief and nervous energy. He cleaned his small house more than necessary, straightened items that had not been moved in years, and chose clothes carefully. He wanted to look presentable, not impressive. That alone felt like progress. The woman spent the evening preparing as well. She chose her clothes with thought, not vanity. She wanted to feel comfortable and true to herself. She reminded herself why she agreed, not to pretend happiness, but to offer support. As night approached, memories surfaced for both of them. The cowboy remembered the last time he had attended something like this with someone beside him, the sound of laughter, the warmth of shared space. He wondered if he remembered how to be that person anymore. The woman remembered times when she had stepped into roles for others before. She had helped people through grief, confusion, and change. This felt different, though. This was personal. This involved standing close to someone who had shown her his weakness. When the time came, they met outside the gathering place. The building was lit warmly, voices carrying through the open doors. Well, for a moment they stood apart, unsure how to begin. Then she offered her arm. He hesitated, then accepted. The gesture was simple, but it changed everything. They walked in together, side by side, heads turned, not dramatically, but with curiosity. The cowboy felt exposed at first, but having her beside him grounded him. He was no longer just the solitary man from the edge of town. He was someone standing with someone else. The woman noticed how his posture changed as they entered. His shoulders straightened slightly. His steps became steadier. She realized then how much this moment meant to him. Inside, they greeted people, answered questions, and shared polite conversation. They kept their stories simple, no details, no lies beyond what was necessary. They stayed close, not out of performance, but out of shared comfort. As the evening continued, the tension slowly eased. The cowboy found himself smiling without forcing it. The woman felt a quiet sense of purpose. They were not pretending to be something they were not. They were simply being present for each other. Neither of them knew what would come next. They did not plan beyond the night. But as the hours passed, both understood that this choice, made out of loneliness and kindness, was already changing them in small but meaningful ways. As the evening moved forward, the space around them felt less heavy. At first, every step they took together had felt planned, careful, almost stiff. Now, without realizing it, they began to move naturally. The cowboy no longer checked the room every few seconds. The woman no longer wondered who might be watching. The gathering slowly turned from a challenge into an experience. People approached them in small groups. Some offered greetings, some shared memories, some asked polite questions. The cowboy answered more than he usually did. Having someone beside him made it easier to speak. When he paused, the woman stepped in smoothly, adding a word or a smile that kept the moment comfortable. They were not acting in the way actors perform. They were responding to each other, adjusting, learning. At one point, an older man who had known the cowboy's family for years approached them. His eyes softened when he looked at the pair. He spoke kindly, mentioning the past, mentioning names that carried history. The cowboy felt emotion rise in his chest, but before it could overwhelm him, the woman placed a gentle hand on his arm. The touch was brief, respectful, and grounding. It reminded him he was not standing alone. That small gesture changed something between them. It was no longer just an agreement for one evening. It became a shared moment of trust. The woman felt it too. She realized she was not just filling a role. She was supporting a real person through a real memory. As the night continued, the gathering shifted into quieter conversations. Music played softly in the background. People sat, talked, and laughed. The cowboy and the woman found a place slightly away from the center of the room. For the first time that evening, they spoke to each other not as part of an act, but as two people sharing space. He told her about the ranch in more detail than he ever had before. He spoke about the land, how it changed with the seasons, and how working with animals brought him peace. He admitted that sometimes the silence helped him think, but other times it made his thoughts too loud. His voice stayed calm, but his honesty carried weight. She listened carefully. She did not interrupt or judge. When he finished, she shared parts of her own story. She spoke about her work, about preserving history, and about the responsibility she felt toward her community. She spoke about learning strength from elders and patience from experience. She did not share everything, but she shared enough to let him see her as more than a steady presence. They laughed quietly at small things. A memory. A shared misunderstanding. A moment from earlier in the evening that now felt lighter. The laughter surprised both of them. It had been a long time since either of them had laughed without effort. At some point, someone invited them to join a group discussion. They went together. The cowboy noticed how easy it felt now to stand beside her. The nervousness that once tightened his chest had faded. He was still aware of the situation, but fear no longer controlled him. The woman noticed changes in herself as well. She had expected to feel like an outsider, stepping into someone else's story for a night. Instead, she felt included, not just by the community, but by the moment itself. She realized that supporting someone did not mean losing herself. It meant choosing connection. As the evening reached its emotional center, a speaker stood to address everyone. The topic was memory, legacy, and the importance of standing together even when life felt uncertain. The words carried through the room, settling into hearts quietly. The cowboy listened closely. He felt as if the message was meant for him. He thought about the years he had spent pulling away from people, believing that solitude was safer. He thought about how easily loneliness had become routine. Standing there, beside someone who had agreed to help him without obligation, he felt something loosen inside him. The woman felt the weight of the words, too. She looked around the room, seeing faces shaped by time and experience. She thought about how often people carried their struggles silently. She wondered how many others in the room had once needed someone to stand beside them, even briefly. When the speaker finished, the room fell into thoughtful quiet. The cowboy took a slow breath. He turned to the woman and thanked her, not just for coming, but for understanding him without needing explanation. His words were simple, but sincere. She nodded and told him she was glad she had come. She admitted that she had been unsure at first. That honesty mattered to him. It made the moment real. As the gathering slowly began to wind down, people started leaving in small groups. The cowboy and the woman stayed until the end, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. When they finally stepped outside, the night air felt cool and calm. They walked a short distance together before stopping. The sounds from inside faded, leaving only quiet around them. For a moment, neither spoke. They both knew the evening was ending, and with it the agreement they had made. The cowboy broke the silence. He told her that he did not regret asking her, even though it had been difficult. He said the night had reminded him of parts of himself he thought were gone. He did not ask for more. He did not make promises. He simply spoke the truth. She told him that she did not regret saying yes. She said the experience had reminded her that kindness could take many forms. Sometimes it was not about fixing someone's life, but about standing with them while they faced it. They stood there, not touching, but connected by shared understanding. The act was over, but the respect remained. Both of them felt changed, though neither could yet explain how. As they parted ways, walking in opposite directions, each carried the weight of the night differently. The cowboy returned to his ranch with a quieter mind. The woman returned home with deeper thoughts. The land around them remained wide and still, but something within both of them had shifted. Neither knew what the future held. There were no plans, no expectations, and no promises, but the night had done more than help one man through a difficult gathering. It had opened a door neither of them knew they were ready to see. The days after the gathering felt different for both of them, even though nothing in their daily routines had changed. The cowboy still woke before sunrise, still worked the land, and still ended his evenings in quiet. Yet something inside him no longer felt as heavy as before. The silence was still there, but it did not press down on him in the same way. It felt softer, almost thoughtful. He found himself remembering small moments from the night, the way she had listened without rushing him, the calm way she had stood beside him when memories grew heavy. These thoughts came to him while he worked, while he walked the fields, and while he sat on his porch at night. He did not try to push them away. He simply let them pass through his mind. At the same time, doubt followed close behind. He worried that he might have misunderstood the meaning of that evening. He reminded himself that it had been an agreement, nothing more. He did not want to imagine things that were not real. He had lived long enough with disappointment to know how easily hope could turn into regret. In town, the woman returned to her responsibilities as well. She went back to her work at the center, greeted people as usual, and stayed busy with projects and meetings. From the outside, she seemed unchanged. Inside, however, she felt more reflective than before. She thought about how easily she had stepped into that evening with him, and how naturally it had felt. That surprised her. She had expected to feel distant, careful, and guarded. Instead, she had felt present and calm. She wondered what that said about her and about him. She also thought about how others might see them now. Small towns remembered things. A few people had already mentioned the night in casual conversation. Their words were kind, but curiosity lingered beneath them. She handled those moments with grace, keeping her answers simple and respectful. Both of them avoided seeking each other out right away, not out of discomfort but out of caution. They needed time to understand their own thoughts before adding another person's feelings to the mix. One afternoon, nearly a week later, the paths crossed again at the same store where the unusual request had first been spoken. The moment they saw each other, time seemed to slow. The cowboy felt his chest tighten slightly, not from fear, but from uncertainty. The woman felt a quiet awareness settle over her. They exchanged greetings, polite and familiar. For a moment it felt as if nothing had changed, and then, as they stood side by side waiting, the silence between them felt different from before. It was not empty. It carried memory. She asked him how he had been. He answered honestly, saying he had been thinking more than usual. She smiled softly, understanding more than the words suggested. She told him she felt the same. They talked for a few minutes, nothing deep, nothing heavy. Still, the conversation felt meaningful. When it was time to leave, neither rushed away. That small pause said more than long speeches ever could. Over the next few days, these brief encounters continued. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they simply acknowledged each other with a nod. Each interaction added a small layer of comfort. They were learning how to exist in each other's presence without pressure. One evening, the cowboy found himself driving into town without a clear reason. He parked near the center where she worked, unsure if he should go inside. He sat in his truck for a long moment, questioning his intentions. He did not want to intrude or create confusion. Eventually, he decided to leave. As he turned the engine on, he saw her stepping outside, locking the door behind her. She noticed him too. For a second, both seemed surprised. Then she walked over. They stood there, the late light stretching long shadows across the ground. He told her he had been passing through. She did not question him. Instead, she asked if he wanted to walk for a bit. He agreed. They walked slowly, talking about ordinary things at first. The weather, work, changes in the town. Gradually, the conversation shifted. He spoke about how the gathering had stayed with him. He admitted that he had not realized how closed off he had become until that night. She listened, then shared her own thoughts. She spoke about how supporting him had reminded her of the importance of simple human connection. She admitted that she had been careful for a long time, protecting herself by keeping emotional distance. There was no rush in their words, no demand for answers, just honesty, unfolding at its own pace. At one point, the cowboy stopped walking and looked at her. He told her he did not want to misunderstand what had happened between them. He said he valued her too much to assume anything. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried emotion. She appreciated his directness. She told him she felt the same. She said the night had meant something to her, but she did not want to define it too quickly. She wanted whatever came next to be real, not born from loneliness or obligation. They stood there in quiet agreement. It was not a dramatic moment. There were no big gestures or promises. Instead, there was mutual respect. As they parted that evening, both felt lighter. The uncertainty was still there, but it no longer felt threatening. It felt like possibility. The cowboy returned to his ranch with a clearer mind. He did not know what the future would bring, but he knew he did not want to retreat into silence again. The woman returned home feeling grounded, confident that she had honored both herself and him. Life continued, as it always did, with its routines and responsibilities. Yet, beneath the surface, something steady was growing. Not rushed, not forced. Just two people learning how to move forward with care, shaped by one honest night and the quiet days that followed. Time moved forward in small, steady steps, the way it often does when real change is happening quietly. There was no sudden shift, no clear moment when everything became different. Instead, the cowboy and the woman continued their lives with a new awareness, one that slowly reshaped their days. They began to see each other more often, not because they planned it, but because they no longer avoided it. Sometimes they met in town. Sometimes she visited the ranch during daylight hours, curious about the land he spoke of so often. He showed her the fences, the animals, and the places where the view stretched far enough to calm the mind. He did not try to impress her. He simply showed her his life as it was. She shared her world with him, too. She invited him to the center, explaining the work she did and the stories she helped preserve. She spoke about the elders she learned from and the responsibility she felt toward the future. He listened with the same attention she had once given him. In those moments, balance formed between them. Their conversations grew deeper but never rushed. They spoke about the past when it felt right. He talked about the losses that had shaped his solitude. She spoke about the choices that had taught her independence. They did not try to fix each other. They accepted what had already happened and focused on understanding. There were moments of doubt, of course. The cowboy sometimes wondered if he was ready to share his life after so many years alone. The woman sometimes questioned whether closeness might cost her the freedom she valued. Instead of letting those thoughts grow in silence, they spoke about them. That honesty became the strongest part of what they were building. One evening they sat together on the porch of the ranch as the sun set. The sky changed color slowly, painting the land in warm light. The quiet felt different now. It was no longer empty. It was shared. The cowboy told her that for a long time he believed being alone was the safest way to live. He said he had convinced himself that needing no one meant strength. Standing there with her, he realized that strength could also mean allowing someone to stand beside him. She listened, then told him that she had spent years carrying responsibility on her own shoulders. She said she had learned to be strong early in life, and that strength had sometimes turned into distance. She admitted that choosing connection felt like a risk, but one she no longer feared. They did not label what they had. They did not rush to define it. Instead, they focused on showing up for each other in small, meaningful ways. A shared meal, a quiet walk, a conversation that lasted longer than expected. People in town noticed the change, but no one needed explanations. What mattered was how they treated each other, with respect, with patience, with care. As seasons shifted, so did their routines. The ranch took on new life with shared effort. The center felt warmer with his quiet presence during community events. They supported each other without losing themselves. One day, the town held another gathering. This time there was no request, no agreement, and no pretending. They arrived together naturally. The cowboy felt no fear of being seen. The woman felt no concern about rules. They stood side by side because they chose to. During that event, the cowboy realized something important. The loneliness that had once shaped his days no longer controlled him. It had not disappeared completely, but it no longer defined him. He had learned that connection did not erase pain, but it softened it. The woman felt a similar clarity. She understood that independence did not mean isolation. She could honor her roots, her responsibilities, and her strength while still allowing space for someone else. As the night ended, they walked out together into the calm air. There was no dramatic moment, no spoken promise, just a shared understanding that what they had built was real. Their story did not end with perfection. Life continued to bring challenges, changes, and uncertainty, but they faced those things with open eyes and steady hearts. What began as a simple, honest request born from loneliness had grown into something meaningful, not because they forced it, but because they allowed it. In the end, the cowboy was no longer defined by solitude, and the woman was no longer carrying everything alone. They had found a way to move forward together, not as an ending, but as a continuation.